Hey, Cassie. Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Hello. Hello.
Dakota. Say hi. Say hi, Cassie. Cassie's in Canada.
Hello. All the way.
You don't know where that is.
No. Okay.
She
Very cold.
might have been there at an emergency landing once. I don't remember. I think she was born, or I was incredibly pregnant with her. I don't quite remember.
We're a safe place to land.
Yeah, so she was in Canada, either in or out. We don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, it's good to finally meet you. Thank you so much for joining. So Cassie originally applied to speak doing our anti-racist event over the summer, and so we're really thrilled that she could join us today. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Cassie. All right?
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen, or try to. So give me one moment. Oh, there's my screen. Let's see how this looks. Perfect. Okay. Well, I'm very excited to be joining you. Oops. Nope. I'm going to try one more time. Okay. One more time. And we will do it again. Perfect. So I cannot see the window, so I will just pop in and out as we go so I can engage with all of you lovely folks. But my name is Cassie. I'm the founder and CEO of an organization called Lunaria, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And I'm a proud ADA List member, really excited to be joining you folks for a chat on anti-racism at work. And just really honored and excited to be here. So thank you to all the ADA List members for sharing space with me today. So we're going to be spending a bit of time together, and during this time, I'm going to be inviting you to engage with some topics where you might want to share your own opinions, lives, and perspectives that you bring into this virtual space. And so to prepare us for that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself and the experiences that I'm bringing into our little virtual get-together. So I studied at the University of Waterloo in Canada in peace and conflict studies, and I started Lunaria in my studies and then grew it after I graduated. And at Lunaria, we work with businesses working to drive diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we complete an audit to understand an organization's needs, match them with weekly education units to grow internal capacity, and then monthly surveys to continue to track their progress. And so I love that I get to work in equity and engage in conversations like this about diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially when it connects to who I am. So I am a mixed race Black woman. I'm the first in my family to get a post-secondary education. I'm a rescue dog owner, an amateur painter, a lover of music, and I have a lot of experience in diversity, equity, and inclusion. But like all of you, I also have a variety of experiences and identity that I'm bringing into this space. And so I encourage you all to show up as you are, as I see you folks have already been doing, and recognize your own identity and how it might be influencing how you hear some of the things I share with you folks and how you respond to them. And so to get us started, I'm actually going to stop sharing so I can see you all. I'm going to be sharing a little story to ground ourselves and invite you to close your eyes and picture what I'm sharing, okay? So I'm going to read a story and I invite you to think about or picture what I am sharing with you. Okay. So you're walking down the street on a hot summer day. You are lost. Your phone is not on and you don't know what to do. You're passing by people on the sidewalk and you see a bank. You think, this is a good place to maybe charge my phone, get some directions. You push open the big glass doors and the handle feels cool on the palm of your hands. The air conditioning hits you nicely as you walk in. You move to take a step and a security guard steps in front of you and sternly says, stop, we're closed. You apologize and you're scooted out. You exit the building and you feel the hot sun on your face and you smell something different. You look straight and there's waste management professionals picking up some empty cans. You lock eyes with one, they smile back at you, and you approach hoping to ask for directions. They hop on the back of their truck and they leave before you have a chance. So you start walking down the street and you see a phone repair shop. Shining like a beacon in the distance, you start sprinting. You open the door and a little bell jingles as you enter. You ask the technician for help and explain to them that your phone will not turn on. They stick a pin in the tiny hole in your phone and give you a battery pack. $10, you pay and leave. Your phone plugs in and it's loading a screen that looks like it's at least 15 minutes. It's getting dark, the streets are empty. You see a bus driver and you approach them, explaining your long journey. They walk you to a bus stop, you say thank you, you get on the bus, and you go home. And so now I'm going to invite you to open your eyes, and if you're comfortable, speak in the general chat or just think in your own heads if you remember who you interacted with in that story. And I'll wait a few seconds, and then I'll answer if people are thinking in their heads. A bus driver, security guard. Awesome. And do you remember what those people looked like? Were you able to picture what they looked like? Perhaps the color of their skin, their age, their race. Did they look like me? What did they look like? Men. White men. Awesome. I'm going to share my screen so I won't be able to see, but I'll wait a few more seconds so I can see some more of the answers. Men, white. Awesome. Thanks for engaging with that. So commonly when we do this activity, and I love to do it before talks, is because it helps us think about the different assumptions that our mind makes. So commonly when this activity is done, most people picture the officer, the waste management professional, security guard, and the tech specialist as men, and often white men. So our mind is constantly making assumptions, and based on these assumptions, they are made to protect us, but they can also lead us to practice favoritism, to be biased, and in the furthest forms become racist. And so I do this activity to help us get comfortable with the idea that our brain naturally, and importantly so, creates expectations about every type of information we consume, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And so our brain, when we did this story, creates categories for people, categories that we were socialized to order people into. So it can be men, women, non-binary, Black, Asian, and we fill these categories with information. So in the case of the story, it might be the jobs they typically have, the voice they speak with, how they make us feel. And then we act based on this information. So in the story, I made decisions for you, but this might be whether you'd approach this person, which would affect yourself picturing yourself in the story, if you'd speak to them, or if you'd even live in a place where you would see someone who looks like them. And we don't just categorize people, but we categorize everything. So take the category of apples, which I just enjoyed one and I'm feeling pretty good, but this contains our beliefs about how apples grow, where they grow, what varieties exist, the colors they come in, their size, what they taste like, how they should be cooked. We may like or dislike apples depending on our experiences with them and what we've been told about them. Then this feeling, along with our beliefs about apples, dictate if we will eat them if they're offered to us, if we'll buy them, or if we'll pick them. And so simply just seeing an apple can bring to mind a host of feelings and associations with that category. And the stronger our associations are, the faster they come. And so the categories we have about social groups or people work similarly to the model I showed, but we label them as stereotypes. And then the attitudes that we have from those stereotypes are called prejudice. And if they're justified or not, our beliefs, our prejudices can be so strongly associated with the category that they're automatically triggered and affect our behavior and decision making. So for example, simply seeing a Black person can bring to mind a host of associations, what that person likes, what they do as a job, what they did in school, what their family looks like, whether we like them, whether they're someone who we could be friends with. And so the process of making these connections is called biases. So biases are made effortlessly and can take hold of our values no matter how good of a person we are or want to be. But the great thing is that our brain is not a hardwired machine. It's malleable and responds to the environments it's placed in and the challenges we face. And so the relationship of stereotype, prejudice, and bias works very differently at a workplace, and it has a very different impact in the story I told you, or if you're at the shops choosing to buy an apple. And so at the end of this chalk, racism and biases will still exist at work, but my goal is to help increase our knowledge of them and equip you with some small tactics you can use to fight against them in the workplace systems you participate in. And so there are many layers that make up an identity that we as people can categorize and be biased in favor of or against. Human identity is complex, but we will be focusing in on one aspect of that identity today, and that's race. And so if we move back to our framework we introduced, we can look at how this looks like in the workplace. So the stereotypes we have can impact the workplace roles we imagine different people can be in based on their race. The prejudice impacts the way we interact with people of different races and the opportunities we might provide someone based on their race. And their biases is then a combination of our stereotypes and our prejudice that takes flights in our thoughts and actions. So we might believe that X person can do Y job because of their race, or X person could not do Y job because of their race. And so this framework can sound almost as simple as choosing an apple, but the implications of this process, although it can happen in seconds, is so critical at work. And so at Lunaria, we get to see firsthand through our surveys just how racism impacts people. But since I'm sharing space with some incredible people in the UK, I wanted to take some of the research that you folks have and marry it with our own research done in our country. So there's a few different ways that racism presents itself at work, and we chose just a few of the categories to illustrate this. And one of the first ones is opportunity. So this might be even the chance for a person of color to get a job, advance in that job, learn further in that role, perhaps work on a project or gain a new experience. And so we tapped into the Trade Union Congress Racism at Work survey. And what this looks like from a statistical point of view in the UK is that while Black, Asian, minority, ethnic people account for 12.5% of the working age population, they represented only about 6% of top management positions. So even though they are working age, they are able to work, they don't then get the opportunity to rise up in those positions. 12% of Black people are in insecure work, so not full-time work, maybe contract or temporary, compared to 5% of the average of all folks. And then Black professionals are twice as likely to be in temporary work than the average. That opportunity to be in a position where you might be working full-time and get the opportunity to advance. The second is in professional workplace relationships. So this includes peer relationships and leadership relationships. It includes the more traditional interactions like meetings, emails, calls, but expands to just how pervasive our workplace is today to include social events, dinners after work, conversations in passing, perhaps when we invite someone to work into our home life and our family life. And workplace relationships is where racist jokes, comments, and remarks can happen. And so in the UK, this can look like 66% of racialized employees facing racism in the workplace in the last 5 years. And while these are ones that I got from that survey from the Trade Union Congress of Racism in North America and even in Canada, a lot of these statistics are very much mirrored. And then the third space is in professional evaluations. So this is how someone's work is viewed, their behavior. It includes formal evaluations, perhaps done monthly or annually, as well as informal ones, like a good job in passing, or the notes that we send in a chat, or, I love what this person did on that project. But in the UK, Black and Asian and minority ethnic people are 3 times as likely to be subjected to excessive surveillance and scrutiny at work, and are 2.5 times more likely to report that they've been given an unfair performance assessment. And so these evaluations affect the mental wellness of someone at work, the perspective of other people on their work and their performance. And so I share these statistics not to bring us sadness or to dampen the lively mood that we all have here, but to make it easier to reflect on our own experiences at work and see how racism flourishes and imagine what the impacts of that is. So racism at work is different than outside in different social spheres. And so it's important to anti-racism at a larger scale to really address what racism is in the workplace. And so anti-racism at work is vital to end racism in other areas of our society. Success in the workplace means economic empowerment. Slavery and discrimination created a level of disparity in the wealth that Black, Asian, and minority ethnic people have, and the wealth that a white person has. So having a good job makes sure that you can advance in other areas of your life and get an income to succeed. Second is empower and decision-making in other areas of society. So as Black, Asian, and minority ethnic people reach higher levels of power at work through wealth and connections, they're able to enter other sectors of our society, whether it's in government, which we had to talk about earlier, finance, public life. A job ensures that not only do people of color have the means to participate, but then they have the connections to expand that power and influence what racism looks like in other areas of our society. And the third is that a job is not only helpful to one person. Racism very much stands on generations of oppression and inequity. And so a job and success at work creates generational wealth, education, and opportunity. It ensures that someone's children can go to school, that they can get help at home with their studies, that they have a parent with connections and experiences at work that they can then pass on to the next generation. And so the statistics and the situations I depicted is in no way the reality of our workplaces forever. And I'm, for one, just hoping, but there's an immense amount of change happening right now. And so my goal or aim here in sharing space with you today is to inspire you as individuals, as leaders in your fields, as students, people joining a new organization or growing a current one, that you all have so much power to be anti-racist at work. And we all need that power. And so I outlined just in the next few slides a few ways that you can be anti-racist at work. So the first kind of ties into the activity that we did in the beginning. So learn more about your own identity and your relationship to anti-racism. So your identity impacts how you're able to interact with anti-racist content so much. Your upbringing, culture, your ties to colonialism. It's important to be aware of your own identity and how it might create biases or impact how you view racism or how you're able to even recognize it happening around you. The second is challenge what we call small acts of racism. So standing against racism can be difficult in any kind of moment. And so in what we can do, I encourage you to challenge, for lack of a better word, small acts of racism. So small acts in this sense are acts taking place in short moments of time, but have long-standing impacts. So this includes jokes, passing comments, or images shared. Especially if you're in a position of power or if you are a white person, challenging small acts is vital, creating big change. It sends a message to the people around you that certain actions are unacceptable. And it also affirms people of color to know that, my feelings matter in this situation. And so a challenge doesn't have to be combative, but it can be as simple as, I'm not sure I agree, or I don't think that's funny, or what you said is actually hurtful because. And then lastly, seek knowledge consciously. So anti-racism work means a lot of unlearning. We have been taught and conditioned to think in a very white way. And this can even make the best of people with the best intentions be discriminatory at moments, just as our beginning activity can highlight some of these expectations that we have. So to be anti-racist, you need to be committed to learning. And so as you seek knowledge, it's important to ask yourself, who created the knowledge that I'm consuming? You want to make sure wherever possible, you're supporting educators and academics with lived experiences. And we're lucky at ADA today to be surrounded by so many of those. And if they don't have lived experience, you want to be making sure that they consulted or better collaborated with people with lived experiences. Okay. Now, I love talking about what we can do because it speaks so much to what we do at Lunaria and in helping people learn about their identity and anti-racism through surveys, to introducing ways to act in our recommendations, to helping people seek knowledge from education units. It shows just how when people come together like us at ADA's List, We have so much potential to create change through small intentional steps. And so I want to thank you all for listening and for Ada's List for the opportunity to share. I'm in Ada's List and I work at Lunaria because I know the importance of diverse communities coming together and working together. And so if you know an organization that you think would benefit from diversity, equity, and inclusion solutions or want to learn more yourself, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Don't be a stranger, and always happy to stay connected. Okay.
That was really great. Thank you so much, Cassie. Are there any questions? I think we've got time for one question. Oh, we might have 10 minutes. Does anybody have any questions? Cassie's like, excuse me.
No, if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer. I have my little, I got the light.
Ah, did you?
I didn't know who sent it, so I was like, I think it's Ada's, but I don't want to ask in case it wasn't. And then I heard in one of the other sessions it was shared, but it's keeping me warm. I got the soft glow on, so I'm looking like I just stepped off a beach. I'm feeling great.
We can just pretend in these countries that we live in that are now farther north than where I grew up. So we've got a few minutes. So I just wanted to thank you, and I guess a bit of a provocation, like your last slides. I would expect more from Ada's List members. I would expect more proactive than just letting, just being nice about a microaggression. What's like the medium level of participation that we can do in being anti-racist at work? And then like the leveling up from medium level, like what are the other tactics that you would recommend as allies?
Yeah, I think what's really lucky about the work that we do is that we really try to be proactive. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the recommendations, and especially when people are just entering their equity journey or their anti-racist journey, is that it's a little bit easier to describe in response to something. But I think in that medium level is not waiting till you see it, not waiting till you know it, not even waiting till you feel it, but saying, these are some conversations that I think we should be having. Here are some recommendations that I've seen that other organizations are doing. What kind of support as a leader are you going to give me to then make this happen? And so it's not even having the opportunity for something like this to happen, or even allowing it to continue in the ways that you are unable to see it, especially if you are someone without lived experiences. What we saw from the statistics is it's probably something that's happening already, and you just are not in a position or a situation to see it.
Thank you. Yeah. And because I think that, so when we did the anti-racist Ada's event over the summer, the response was overwhelming. And I think that what we could do for SMART is just work harder on creating an army of allies that are skilled up, that are ready to go to actually like change the fucking scene in this show, because it is completely unacceptable that we're here, but we are. And so as opposed to complaining about that, it's time to actually like proactively do what we can to promote and to hire and to recruit and to have conversations with Black women and with brown women, with people that they would most likely be candidates because they didn't go to the fancy schools. And I think that's the thing that we should all be doing as Ada's List members. I've got a question, and then I think we'll have to wrap up. How do I go about learning more about my identity and my identity's relationship to racism? It's a great question.
That's a really good question. I think one of the biggest pieces is in history. So what makes racism, and individual racism, which we largely talked about, is that it is built on generations and years of oppression and racism back to colonialism, or even before that. Thinking about, in the last 100 years, or even further than that, what were your ancestors doing? What kind of ties do you have to the land that you live on, to the institutions that you interact with? I think getting familiar with that history and the history of your identity, and then taking the time to take unconscious bias training to, even understand, okay, like what is my mind doing and how can I really catch myself when I'm about to slip in? Because I think one of the biggest issues that unconscious bias is unconscious, and it doesn't make us bad people, but we are living in such a racist and divided society that we as individuals really have to push forward to make any change.
Thank you. How do we balance the onus on underrepresented groups to be the educators, but still have the voice of those with lived experience?
Yeah, I love that. I love that question. I think one of the best practices that we have is, to that point, you never want to expect or ask someone in an underrepresented group to educate you. But what's really interesting now is that there's so many folks, even like us at Lunera, who have positioned ourselves to say, we have lived experiences, we have the training, we have the education, and we are offering this. And I so think recognizing the folks who put themselves on a platform and are offering their voice as a mode of education, as opposed to asking someone who perhaps didn't position themselves in that way. And I think a good reflection is when you are talking about these issues is to ask, okay, why do I think that my voice is necessary in this conversation? Is there someone else's voice in this conversation who has lived experience that I can just amplify and not use my own? And the third is, what value am I getting when I'm talking about this? So am I getting value because people are seeing that I'm involved in this conversation? Or am I giving value and saying, I'm going to reshare you, but like people might not think, oh, wow, like Cassie's amazing. And so I think those three questions of, did this person volunteer to do this? 2, is my original voice needed? And then that third, am I giving or am I receiving value in this conversation?
That is a really great answer. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the things that you see in a workplace is, sorry.
No worries.
Tiptoeing upstairs. One of the things that you see in the workplace is, I totally lost what I was going to say. Oh, that we can all do is do a better job of amplifying the voices that are the most marginalized. And I think that is a responsibility, and that's something that we can all do. I'm going to, so there's one more question, then I'm going to go on mute, and then we've got to switch. Do you have some advice for Black women wanting to make a change in the workplace, and where do I start?
Yeah, I love that question, Nicole. I think especially, when our world blew up publicly, wasn't not already blown up, but blew up publicly in the Black community earlier this summer. I think I myself find a lot of opportunity or tools to make change in community groups. So like List, but also ones that reflect your own racial identity. So I'm in a few Black professional groups and Slack groups where, people are having the hard questions, and it's in a safe space where you're surrounded by people with lived experience, and people are saying, I did this in my workplace and it went like this, or I did this in my workplace and it went that way. And there's even, as far as resources, like letters and emails templated that you can send to your leadership. But I think those community groups are really important because you can have conversations of, well, I have XYZ resource, I have my letter I can send, I have my recommendations. And then, I also want to know from people with lived experience, is it safe for my role if I take this action? What do you think is going to happen after? And you have just a sounding board to have those important conversations. And I think even in my professional development, those community groups like ADA's, but also ones that are focused on my own racial identity, have been so vital to then make that change and even just get a start. And even from the outside looking in, thinking, what might this look like?
Thank you so much, Cassie. That is super helpful. And sorry about the distractions in the background.
No worries.
This is big chaos. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thanks for joining us all the way across the other side of the ocean. And I hope one day we can meet. And I look forward to getting, figuring out what we can do as ADA's List, how we can support you and make our community a bunch of trained activists to just head out and go actually start changing the conversation. Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you. Everybody else, we are going to switch once more. So, and then So we have a few minutes to go to the other rooms. And I think by now you kind of know the routine. In this room, we will be joined by Lauren Dudley, who will be talking about building the digital infrastructure for the circular economy. Kit Gilbert will be in the career track, talking about the power of empathy in your career. And Finn O'Connor will be in the tech track, talking about the soft skills of hard technology. So I will back out and let you all transfer over into the other rooms. Thank you so much.